The massive space station called Nexus floated in the dark between three star systems. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came here to trade, talk, and sometimes fight. The station was so big that it had its own weather inside some sections. Millions of aliens lived and worked here, making it the busiest place in known space. Captain Lee Jinho walked through the main corridor, looking at all the strange creatures around him. He had been in space for 6 months now, but he still found it amazing to see so many different kinds of life in one place. Some aliens were tall as trees, others small as cats. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like they were made of rock. Jinho was on leave from his Navy SEAL unit. After completing a difficult mission on a distant planet, his commander had ordered him to take 2 weeks off. Most soldiers would go to a beach planet or a pleasure station, but Jinho was curious about other species and their ways of fighting. So he came to Nexus Station to learn. He was walking past a crowd of excited aliens when he heard loud cheering. The sound came from a huge building in the center of the station. Above the entrance, bright letters spelled out Grand Combat Arena in a dozen different languages. "What is happening in there?" Jinho asked a small blue alien who was selling food nearby. The alien's 4 eyes lit up with excitement. "Big fight today. The Kralix warriors are showing their combat skills. They are the best fighters in the galaxy. No one has ever beaten them." Jinho had heard of the Kralix. They were 7 feet tall, had tough scales instead of skin, and were born to fight. Their military was feared across the galaxy. Even the peaceful species knew not to make the Kralix angry. "Are they fighting another military unit?" Jinho asked. "Yes, but we do not know which one yet. The arena keeps it secret until the last moment. Makes it more exciting." The blue alien rubbed his hands together. "You should go watch. Tickets are still available." Jinho thanked the alien and walked toward the arena. The building was enormous, bigger than any stadium he had ever seen on Earth. Thousands of aliens were going inside, talking excitedly in their different languages. The air buzzed with energy and anticipation. Inside the arena, Jinho found a seat in the middle section. The fighting area below was huge, with different types of terrain. There were hills, valleys, walls, and even a small forest. It looked like a place where real battles might happen, not just games. A voice spoke over the arena's speakers. It was translated into every language at the same time, so everyone could understand. "Welcome to today's combat exhibition. The famous Kralix Strike Team 7 will demonstrate their fighting skills against an opponent to be revealed shortly." The crowd cheered loudly. Jinho watched as 7 enormous Kralix warriors marched into the arena. They wore black armor and carried advanced weapons. Their leader, who was even bigger than the others, raised his weapon above his head. The crowd went wild. "I am Commander Vexstar," the leader announced. His voice was deep and scary. "My team has never lost a battle. We have conquered 12 worlds and defeated every enemy we have faced. Today we will show you why the Kralix are the greatest warriors in the galaxy." The other Kralix warriors spread out in perfect formation. They moved like a machine, each knowing exactly what the others would do. Jinho had to admit they looked impressive. Their weapons were clearly advanced and they seemed to know how to use them. "The opposing team will enter shortly," the announcer said. "Combat will begin in 10 minutes. But then something went wrong. Red lights started flashing all over the arena. An alarm began to sound. The crowd looked confused and started talking nervously. "Attention," a different voice said over the speakers. This one sounded like a computer. "We are experiencing a technical malfunction. The arena's safety systems have activated emergency protocols. All exits are now sealed." The crowd began to panic. Aliens started running toward the exits, but the doors would not open. The Kralix warriors looked around, confused, but not worried. They were used to unexpected situations. "The combat scenario has been automatically changed from demonstration to live combat exercise," the computer voice continued. "Combat will begin in 10 minutes, regardless of whether the opposing team has arrived. This is not a drill." Jinho felt his heart rate increase. This was not good. The Kralix were ready for a planned demonstration, not a real fight. But now they were trapped in the arena with whatever opponent was supposed to face them. He looked around the crowd. Everyone was scared. Some aliens were crying. Others were trying to call for help on their communication devices, but nothing was working. The arena's emergency systems had blocked all signals. Jinho made a decision. He was a Navy SEAL. He was trained for situations like this. While everyone else was panicking, he quietly left his seat and made his way toward the arena's control areas. The corridors behind the arena were empty. Everyone had either run away or was trapped in the seating areas. Jinho found the control room, but it was abandoned. The technicians had fled when the malfunction started. He looked at the control panels. They were alien technology, but the basic principles were the same as human systems. He could see that the arena's computer had locked down everything. The only way to stop the combat scenario was to either fix the malfunction or have someone enter the arena as the opposing team. Through the control room's windows, he could see the HFY warriors waiting in the arena. They were checking their weapons and talking to each other. They seemed calm, but he could tell they were getting ready for a fight. The computer voice spoke again. 5 minutes until combat begins. Opposing team must enter the arena immediately or forfeit the match. Jinho looked at the controls again. He could try to override the system, but it might take hours to figure out the alien technology. The crowd was trapped, and he did not know what would happen if the combat scenario played out with only one team. He made his choice. Walking to the equipment room, he found the combat gear that was meant for the opposing team. The weapons and armor were standard Galactic military issue. Nothing special, but functional. 2 minutes until combat begins, the computer announced. Jinho put on the basic armor and selected a few weapons. He did not take much. In his experience, having too much equipment could slow you down. It was better to be fast and smart than heavy and slow. He walked toward the arena entrance. The HFY warriors were still waiting, looking bored. They probably thought this was just another easy victory. They had no idea what was about to happen. Combat begins in 30 seconds, the computer said. Jinho took a deep breath and stepped into the arena. The door sealed behind him with a loud click. There was no going back now. The HFY warriors looked at him with surprise. They had expected another military unit, not one small human in basic armor. Commander Vextar tilted his head, confused. Combat begins now, the computer announced. The arena fell silent. 7 of the galaxy's most feared warriors faced one human soldier. In the stands, thousands of aliens watched in shocked silence. The hunt was about to begin. Commander Vextar stared at the small human who had just entered the arena. This had to be some kind of mistake. The creature was barely 6 feet tall and looked weak compared to a HFY warrior. Its skin was soft and pink, not covered in protective scales. It wore basic armor that looked like training equipment. Is this a joke? Vextar asked his second-in-command, warrior Kexalon. Where is the real opposing team? Kexalon shook his massive head. I do not know, Commander. The arena systems show this human as our opponent. The other HFY warriors began to laugh. They had fought against many species across the galaxy. Tall rock creatures, fast insect people, even energy beings made of pure light. But they had never seen anything as pathetic as this small human. Maybe it is a new species that wants to test their warriors, said Warrior Dexmore. Some races send their weakest first to see what we can do. Vextar nodded. That made sense. Many species had done this before. They would sacrifice 1 or 2 soldiers to learn about HFY's fighting methods. Then they would send their real warriors later. In the stands above, the crowd was completely silent. Thousands of aliens watched the small human standing alone in the center of the arena. Some felt sorry for him. Others were angry that their entertainment had been ruined by this obvious mistake. Li Jinho stood calmly in the middle of the arena and looked around. He ignored the HFY warriors for now and studied the fighting area. His SEAL training had taught him that understanding the battlefield was more important than understanding the enemy. The arena was about 200 meters long and 100 meters wide. There were hills on the left side, a small forest on the right, and a maze of walls in the center, perfect for someone who knew how to use cover and concealment. He noticed the weapon dispensers along the walls. They were automated systems that would give out different types of weapons during the fight. The arena was designed to make combat more interesting by changing the available equipment. Jinho also saw the cameras. Dozens of them were hidden around the arena, recording everything for the audience. Some were obvious, but others were well hidden. He made a mental note of their positions. The lighting was bright now, but he could see controls that would let someone change it during the fight. The arena could be made dark, or filled with fog, or even flooded with different colored lights. All of these things could be used as tactical advantages. "Attention combatants," the computer voice announced. "You have 2 minutes to select your initial weapons. Combat will begin when both teams are ready." The Kralix warriors moved to the nearest weapon dispenser. They selected plasma rifles, energy shields, and explosive grenades. Each warrior took the same equipment, showing their training and discipline. They were used to fighting as a unit with identical gear. Jinho walked slowly to a different dispenser. The Kralix watched him with amusement. The human was taking his time, examining each weapon carefully. He seemed to be thinking about something. "Look at him," Warrior Texvor said with a laugh. "He does not even know how to choose weapons quickly. This will be over in seconds." But Jinho was not confused. He was being careful. He selected a basic plasma rifle, but not the most powerful one. He took a small energy shield but left the bigger ones. He picked up some basic explosives, but only a few. The Kralix were puzzled. Why would someone choose weaker weapons when stronger ones were available? Jinho also took some items that the Kralix had ignored. A small cutting tool, a rope, some metal strips, and a portable light. To the aliens, these looked like maintenance. Equipment, not weapons. "Weapon selection complete," the computer announced. "Combat will begin in 30 seconds. Reminder, this is a live combat exercise. Victory conditions are defeat of the opposing team through any means necessary." The Kralix warriors formed their standard battle formation. Vextar and 2 warriors in the center, 2 warriors on each flank. They raised their plasma rifles and activated their energy shields. Their formation had conquered armies across the galaxy. Jinho did something unexpected. Instead of preparing to fight, he sat down on the ground and closed his eyes. "What is he doing?" Kexalon asked, confused. "Maybe he is praying to his gods," Dexmore suggested. "Some species do that before they die." But Jinho was not praying. He was listening. The arena had its own sounds, air moving through the ventilation systems, the hum of the lights, the distant noise of the crowd. He was learning the arena's rhythm so he would notice when something changed. He was also thinking about the Kralix. They were big, strong, and well-armed. But they moved in formation, which meant they thought as a group. Group thinking could be a weakness if you knew how to exploit it. 10 seconds until combat begins, the computer announced. Jinho opened his eyes and stood up. He looked directly at Commander Vextar and nodded slightly. It was a sign of respect between warriors. The Kralix commander was surprised by this gesture. 5 seconds. The Kralix raised their weapons and aimed at the human. 3 seconds. Jinho picked up his rifle but did not aim it at anyone. Combat begins now. The arena's barriers dropped. Combat was officially active. The Kralix expected the human to charge at them or run away in fear. Instead, Jinho did something that shocked everyone. He smiled. Then he turned and walked calmly toward the maze of walls in the center of the arena. He did not run, he did not shoot. He just walked away as if he was taking a stroll in a park. "What is he doing?" Vextar shouted. "Is he surrendering? Should we shoot him in the back?" asked Texivor. Vextar hesitated. Shooting an enemy in the back was legal in combat, but it was not honorable. The Kralix had a warrior code. They preferred to face their enemies directly. "No," Vextar decided. "We will capture him alive. Dexmore Texivor, go get him. Be careful not to kill him. I want to question him about why he came here alone." The 2 Kralix warriors jogged toward the maze where the human had disappeared. They were confident and relaxed. How dangerous could one small human be? They reached the entrance to the maze and looked inside. The walls were about 8 feet high. made of some kind of metal alloy. There were many paths through the maze, creating dozens of places to hide. "Human," Dexmore called out. "Come out now, and we will make your death quick and painless." There was no answer. "Maybe he is hiding because he is scared," Texivore suggested. They entered the maze together, moving slowly and carefully. Their plasma rifles were ready to fire. They stayed close to each other, watching each other's backs. The maze was quiet, except for their footsteps. Too quiet. Both warriors began to feel nervous, though they did not want to admit it. They turned a corner and found something strange. The human's basic armor was lying on the ground, along with his energy shield, but there was no sign of the human himself. "Where did he go?" Dexmore whispered. That was when they heard a soft sound behind them. Before they could turn around, something small and hard hit both warriors in the neck. They felt a sharp pain, then their vision began to blur. "What?" Texivore tried to speak, but his words came out slurred. Both Kralix warriors collapsed to the ground, unconscious but alive. Their weapons clattered uselessly beside them. Lee Jinho stepped out from behind a wall where he had been hiding. In his hand was a small dart gun he had improvised from the maintenance equipment. The darts were made from metal strips and contained a mild sedative he had extracted from the arena's medical supplies. He picked up the Kralix weapons and disabled them. Then he dragged both unconscious warriors deeper into the maze and tied them up with the rope he had taken. In the main arena, Commander Vextar was getting impatient. "Dexmore, Texivore, report your status." There was no answer from his warriors' communicators. "Kexalon, take 2 warriors and go find them. Something is wrong." The crowd in the stands was getting excited. They could not see what was happening in the maze, but they knew something unexpected was occurring. This was not the quick victory they had expected. Lee Jinho moved through the maze like a ghost. He had already begun to change the rules of the game. The Kralix thought they were hunting him, but the truth was becoming clear. He was hunting them. Commander Vextar waited for his warriors to report back from the maze. 5 minutes had passed since they entered, and there was still no word from them. This was not normal. Kralix warriors always stayed in contact during missions. "Kexalon," Vextar ordered his second-in-command. "Take warriors Nextar and Pexrin with you. Find Dexmore and Texivore. Something has happened to them." Kexalon nodded and selected 2 warriors to accompany him. They moved toward the maze entrance, with their weapons ready. Unlike the first 2 warriors, they approached carefully and stayed alert. In the stands above, the crowd was getting restless. They could not see what was happening in the maze, but they knew something was wrong. The arena's cameras inside the maze had mysteriously stopped working. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer tried to keep the audience calm, "we are experiencing some technical difficulties with our camera systems. Please be patient while we resolve this issue." But the aliens in the crowd were not stupid. They could see that the Kralix warriors looked worried. Commander Vextar was pacing back and forth, speaking urgently into his communicator. This was not going according to plan. Inside the maze, Lee Jinho moved like a shadow. He had studied the layout carefully and memorized every path and dead end. The Kralix warriors were bigger and stronger, but they did not know the terrain like he did. He watched from a hiding spot as 3 more Kralix entered the maze. These ones were more careful than the first 2. They moved slowly and checked every corner. But careful was not enough against someone who had been trained to be invisible. Jinho had already set up several simple traps using the materials he had taken from the weapon dispensers. A tripwire here, a noisemaker there, a small explosive in just the right place. Nothing that would kill the Kralix, but enough to confuse and separate them. The 3 Kralix warriors stayed together as they searched. They found the spot where their companions had disappeared, but there was no sign of what had happened to them. "Their weapons are gone," Kexalon reported over his communicator. "There are signs of a struggle, but no bodies." "Are they dead?" Vextar asked from outside the maze. "I do not think so. There is no blood, but they are definitely gone." Jinho smiled as he listened to their conversation. He had taken the unconscious warriors to a hidden section of the maze and left them tied up but unharmed. He was not a killer unless he had to be. His mission was to survive and win, not to murder. The three searching warriors continued deeper into the maze. That was when Jinho sprung his first trap. A small explosive went off behind them, not enough to hurt them but loud enough to make them jump and spin around. While they were distracted by the explosion, a tripwire activated another device that made a loud noise to their left. The Kraliks immediately turned toward the sound, raising their weapons. "There!" Nexstar shouted, pointing his plasma rifle toward the noise. I saw movement, but there was nothing there except a small metal object rolling on the ground. It was one of Jinho's improvised noisemakers. It is a distraction, Kexalon realized. He is trying to confuse us. Who is he? Pexrin asked nervously. What kind of creature can disappear like this? Kexalon did not answer because he did not know. In all his years of combat, he had never faced an enemy who fought like this. The Kraliks' way of war was direct and brutal. You found your enemy, you shot your enemy, you won. This human was doing something completely different. Jinho used their confusion to move to a new position. He climbed up onto one of the maze walls and crawled along the top, staying low so the cameras could not see him. From up there, he could see the three Kraliks warriors moving through the maze below him. He dropped down silently behind Pexrin, who was bringing up the rear of their group. Before the Kraliks warrior could react, Jinho pressed the barrel of a captured plasma rifle against his back. Do not move, Jinho whispered in the Kraliks' language. He had studied their speech patterns. During his time on the space station, Pexrin froze. He wanted to call out to his companions, but the human's weapon was pressed against his spine. One shot would kill him instantly. Drop your weapon, Jinho ordered quietly. Pexrin let his plasma rifle fall to the ground. Jinho quickly grabbed it and stepped back. Sleep, Jinho said and shot Pexrin with a stun setting. The Kraliks warrior collapsed unconscious. The other two warriors heard the sound of the stun blast and spun around. But Jinho was already gone, disappeared into the maze again. All they found was their unconscious companion and his missing weapon. Kexalon, to Commander Vextar, the warrior reported with growing concern. We have another warrior down. The human is hunting us. Outside the maze, Vextar felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, which every warrior understood, but fear of the unknown. How was one small human defeating his elite warriors? Fall back, Vextar ordered. Return to the main arena immediately. But when Kexalon and Nexstar tried to leave the maze, they found that the exit had been blocked. Heavy metal objects had been stacked in front of the entrance, making it impossible to get out quickly. The exit is blocked, Commander, Kexalon reported. We are trapped in here with him. The crowd in the stands was now completely silent. They could hear the radio conversations between the Kraliks warriors, and they were beginning to understand what was happening. The human was not running away. He was hunting the galaxy's most feared warriors like they were prey animals. Aliens who had come to watch the Kraliks demonstrate their power were instead seeing them get picked off, one by a creature they had never heard of before. What kind of species is this human? Asked a tall insect alien to his companion. I do not know, replied a furry creature with 6 eyes, but I am glad they are not our enemies. Inside the maze, Jinho continued his systematic hunt. He had reduced the Kraliks' force from 7 warriors to 2 in less than 30 minutes. But these last 2 were the most dangerous. They were learning from their mistakes and adapting to his tactics. Kexalon and Nexstar stopped moving through the maze randomly. Instead, they found a good defensive position and waited. They knew the human would have to come to them eventually. We need to think like he thinks, Kexalon said to his companion. He is not fighting like a warrior. He is fighting like a predator. What is a predator? Nexstar asked. The concept did not exist in Kraliks culture. They were always the strongest, so they had never been hunted. A creature that kills other creatures for food, Kexalon explained. My people eliminated all predators from our world long ago, but I have studied other planets. Predators are patient. They watch, they wait, they strike when their prey is weakest. As, if to prove his point, a small object rolled into their defensive position, both warriors immediately pointed their weapons at it, expecting an attack. but it was just an empty food container. Another distraction. While they were focused on the container, Jinho appeared on the wall above them. He had climbed up from the other side and was now looking down at them. "Hello?" he said calmly. Both Kralix warriors looked up in shock. Before they could raise their weapons, Jinho dropped two small objects down to them. Smoke grenades. Thick white smoke filled their position. Instantly, the warriors could not see anything. They fired their weapons blindly, but the energy blasts hit only walls. When the smoke cleared, both warriors were unconscious on the ground. Jinho had dropped down into the smoke and stunned them both before they knew what was happening. Now only, Commander Vextar remained outside the maze. Jinho walked calmly out of the maze. The metal objects blocking the exit moved aside easily once you knew how they were balanced. He had designed the trap to keep the Kralix in, not to keep himself out. He stepped into the main arena and looked at the last Kralix warrior. Commander, Vextar stood alone in the center of the fighting area, his weapon ready. The crowd in the stands was completely silent. They were watching something that had never happened before in Galactic history. The Kralix Strike Team 7, the most feared military unit in known space, had been defeated by one human. "What are you?" Vextar asked. His voice was no longer confident and commanding. It was the voice of someone who had just realized he was facing something beyond his understanding. Jinho checked his basic equipment and looked at the Kralix commander. The real fight was about to begin. Commander Vexistar and Li Jinho circled each other slowly in the center of the arena. The Kralix commander held his long combat knife like a sword, using both hands to control the heavy blade. Jinho held his smaller knife low and relaxed, the way someone holds a tool they have used many times before. The crowd in the stands watched in complete silence. This was the moment that would decide everything. The greatest Kralix warrior against the mysterious human who had already done the impossible. "You fight well for prey," Vextar said, trying to make the human angry. "Angry fighters made mistakes." "Thank you," Jinho replied calmly. "You fight well for someone who has never been prey." Vextar lunged forward with his knife, using his long reach to try to end the fight quickly. The blade moved fast and sharp toward Jinho's chest, but the human was not there when the knife arrived. He had stepped to the side and moved closer to Vextar instead of away. This surprised the Kralix commander, who expected his opponent to back away from the attack. Jinho's smaller knife flicked out like a snake's tongue, cutting a shallow line across Vextar's arm. It was not a deep wound, but it drew blood. Vextar jumped back, looking at the cut on his arm in shock. In all his years of combat, very few enemies had managed to wound him, and certainly not with such a small weapon. "First blood to me," Jinho said quietly. The Kralix commander roared in anger and attacked again, this time with a series of powerful strikes. His knife cut through the air where Jinho had been, but the human seemed to flow around each attack, like water. Every time Vextar struck, Jinho was somewhere else. The human moved in ways that seemed impossible. He would duck under a high cut, then suddenly be beside the Kralix instead of in front of him. "Stand still and fight," Vextar demanded, breathing hard from his efforts. "Why?" Jinho asked, making another small cut on the commander's leg. "This is working fine for me." The crowd began to understand what they were seeing. The human was not trying to deliver one killing blow. He was slowly wearing down his much larger opponent with many small wounds, like a predator that followed its prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Vextar was getting tired. His heavy armor and large size made every movement cost him energy. But Jinho seemed as fresh as when the fight began. The human moved, efficiently, never wasting motion or strength. "What kind of training created you?" Vextar asked during a brief pause in their fight. "Pain," Jinho answered simply. "We train until we cannot continue. Then we train more. We learn to fight when we are tired, hurt, afraid, and alone. We learn that giving up is not an option." Vextar tried a different approach. Instead of attacking with his knife, he attempted to grab the human with his free hand. His plan was to use his superior size and strength to wrestle Jinho to the ground. But when his large hand reached for the human, Jinho grabbed the Kralix's wrist and used Vextar's own momentum against him. The commander found himself flying through the air and landing hard on the arena floor. "How did you do that?" Vexitar gasped, struggling to get back to his feet. "Physics," Jinho replied. "Your size and strength become weaknesses if someone knows how to use them against you." The aliens in the crowd were talking excitedly now. They had never seen fighting techniques like this. Most galactic species fought with strength against strength, weapon against weapon. But this human was fighting with knowledge and skill. Vexitar got back up, but he was moving more slowly now. The fall had hurt him, and he was beginning to realize that everything he knew about combat was useless against this opponent. "You said humans were prey on your world," Vextar said, trying to understand. "How did prey become this dangerous?" Jinho paused in his movements. For a moment, his expression became sad. "We had no choice. Become predators or die. Our world taught us that the universe does not care if you are big or small, strong or weak. It only cares if you survive. But you joined the galactic community," Vextar said. "You could have conquered instead." "We tried conquest once," Jinho replied. "We conquered ourselves. We learned that victory without honor is meaningless. Now, we prefer to explore, to learn, to help others, but we remember how to fight when we must." Vextar made one final desperate attack, putting all his remaining strength into a powerful strike aimed at the human's head, but Jinho was ready for it. The human caught the Kralix's wrist as the knife descended, twisted his body, and used a joint lock that made Vextar drop his weapon. Before the commander could react, Jinho had him in a submission hold that made it impossible to move. "Yield," Jinho said quietly. "You have fought with honor. There is no shame in losing to a better opponent." Vextar struggled for a moment, then realized he was completely helpless. The human could kill him easily, but was offering him the chance to surrender instead. "I yield," Vextar said, his voice barely a whisper. Jinho immediately released him and stepped back. He helped the Kralix commander to his feet, showing respect for a worthy opponent. The arena erupted in noise as thousands of aliens cheered, screamed, and talked all at once. They had just witnessed something that would change how they thought about warfare forever. Combat exercise concluded. The arena's computer announced. Winner, human-designated Lee Jinho. All safety systems returning to normal operation. The exits unlocked and emergency crews rushed into the arena. Medical teams went to check on the unconscious Kralix warriors in the maze, while technicians began working on the damaged systems. But nobody paid much attention to the technical problems. Everyone was focused on the small human who had just defeated the galaxy's most feared military unit by himself. News reporters from dozens of species pushed into the arena, trying to get interviews. Military observers frantically took notes and made recordings. Diplomats activated emergency communication channels to contact their home governments. Lee Jinho ignored all the excitement around him. He walked calmly to where Commander Vextar was receiving medical attention and knelt beside him. "You fought well," Jinho said respectfully. "Your warriors are brave and skilled. They were simply not prepared for our style of combat." Vexitar looked up at the human with new understanding. "What happens now? Will your people come to conquer us?" Jinho shook his head. "We do not conquer unless attacked. We prefer to trade, to learn, to make friends. But now everyone will know that we can defend ourselves if necessary." The Kralix commander nodded slowly. "The galaxy will never underestimate humans again." Word of the fight spread across known space within hours. Every species with access to galactic communication networks heard the story of the lone human who defeated the Kralix Strike Team 7. Military academies began requesting all available information about human combat techniques. Diplomatic missions were hastily organized to establish contact with Earth. Trade delegations prepared to offer partnerships and alliances. Some species began to worry. If one human could do this much damage, what could an army of humans accomplish? But most aliens were simply curious. They wanted to meet these new people who had appeared seemingly from nowhere and changed everything. Lee Jinho finally made it back to his quarters on Nexus Station late that night. He was tired and wanted nothing more than a hot shower and some sleep. Tomorrow he would have to deal with reporters, diplomats, and military officials who all wanted to talk to him. As he prepared for bed, he thought about home. Earth seemed very far away now. He wondered what his family would think when they heard about what had happened today. His communicator chimed with an incoming message. It was from his commanding officer back on Earth. "Jinho," the message said. "I just heard about your little vacation activity. The president wants to talk to you. The Joint Chiefs want to talk to you. Hell, everyone wants to talk to you. You just announced to the entire galaxy that humanity has arrived. Hope you are ready for what comes next." Jinho smiled and turned off the communicator. He had been a Navy SEAL for 10 years. He was used to impossible situations and unexpected challenges. The galaxy wanted to know about humans. Fine. They would learn that Earth's children were ready to take their place among the stars, but they would also learn that humans were not conquerors or destroyers. They were explorers, teachers, and friends to those who offered friendship, and to those who offered violence, they were something much more dangerous. They were survivors.